In this podcast episode, the hosts interview Wilfred Reilly, a political science professor at Kentucky State University, who delves into the complexities of race relations, policing, and the narratives surrounding hate crimes in America. Reilly, an expert on hate crime hoaxes, discusses how media narratives often distort reality, leading to widespread misconceptions about race and crime. Reilly begins by addressing the phenomenon of hate crime hoaxes using high-profile cases like Jussie Smollett, Michael Brown, and Trayvon Martin as examples. He argues that these narratives, often sensationalized by the media, create a false perception of rampant racism and violence against marginalized groups. For instance, the Smollett case, in which the actor claimed to be attacked by two men in MAGA hats, was widely reported as a hate crime but was later revealed to be fabricated. Reilly emphasizes that such hoaxes not only mislead the public, but also undermine genuine discussions about race and policing. He points out that the media's portrayal of these incidents often lacks nuance, focusing on emotionally charged narratives rather than the facts. This has led to a significant gap between public perception and reality, with many Americans believing that unarmed black men are killed by police at alarming rates. In reality, the number of unarmed black men killed by police each year is around 12, a stark contrast to the thousands that many believe. Reilly discusses how the media's focus on sensational stories has contributed to a decline in trust regarding race relations in America. He cites data from Pew Research, which shows that while objective measures of race relations have improved, public perception has worsened. This disconnect is largely fueled by a media landscape that prioritizes clicks and sensationalism over accurate reporting. Reilly argues that this has created a culture of victimization, where individuals and groups are incentivized to portray themselves as victims to gain social capital. The conversation shifts to the broader implications of these narratives on policing and public safety. Reilly notes that the rise of movements like Black Lives Matter has led to a phenomenon known as the Ferguson effect, where police officers become hesitant to engage in proactive policing due to fear of backlash. This has resulted in increased crime rates in many urban areas, disproportionately affecting the very communities that activists claim to protect. Reilly critiques the role of activist organizations and academia in perpetuating these narratives. He argues that many scholars and activists have adopted a framework that attributes all disparities between racial groups to systemic racism, ignoring other potential factors such as socioeconomic status, education, and cultural differences. This oversimplification not only distorts the conversation around race, but also hinders the development of effective solutions to genuine issues facing marginalized communities. He highlights the importance of addressing the mental health crisis in America, particularly among the homeless population, many of whom are victims of systemic failures in mental health care. Reilly suggests that instead of defunding the police, society should focus on better funding and training for law enforcement, as well as integrating mental health professionals into policing strategies. Throughout the podcast, Reilly emphasizes the dangers of misrepresentation in media narratives. He argues that the portrayal of incidents like the Amy Cooper case, where a white woman called the police on a black man in Central Park, was framed as an example of racial oppression without considering the context of the situation. Reilly asserts that both parties in these encounters often share responsibility for the conflict. Yet the media narrative tends to favor a simplistic oppressor-oppressed dichotomy. Reilly also discusses the broader societal implications of these narratives, noting that they contribute to a culture of fear and division. He argues that the constant emphasis on victimization and oppression can lead to a sense of hopelessness and despair, particularly among young people. Instead of fostering a sense of agency and empowerment, these narratives can create a cycle of dependency on external validation and support. In conclusion, Wilfred Reilly calls for a more nuanced and honest conversation about race, crime, and policing in America. He urges listeners to critically evaluate the narratives presented by the media and to seek out the truth behind the statistics. By doing so, he believes society can move toward a more constructive dialogue that addresses the real issues at hand, rather than getting caught up in sensationalized stories that ultimately do more harm than good.